Hello folks! My oh my, it just cannot stop raining, can it? So, I'm actually surprised I didn't visit this location right here earlier on in the coverage project history. This is the last place we are going to go to on this New England excursion. Sad to say it, but all tours have to come to an end someday. And for that, today's the day. I just wish it could be a lot sunnier, you know? Like, this is our last destination on this New England excursion. You'd want it to be a grand old finale, but it's this dreary, rainy day. Maybe it just encapsulates the whole environment of this big city known as Albany, New York. This is the capital of the Empire State. In the state of New York, there are two big powerhouse cities which control the economic activity, the cultural activity, and the political activity of the state of New York. One being, of course, New York City, the Big Apple. And that goes without saying, it is just a monster of a city. Over 8 million people. The second one is right here, Albany. Being the state capital, you would think it's New York City, but no, it's Albany. This, I guess you could say, relatively large city, nothing compared to New York City, but this relatively large city holds the seat of government for the state of New York. Now, for us being in so many places, visiting all these different locations within New York State, this is actually the first time we've been to the capital region in New York State. It's its own separate region. Now, although there are so many different other places with a history of its own, like Schenectady and Troy, in this capital region of New York State, I think it's fitting that we visit the capital before anywhere else. But yeah, Albany is a very interesting city. It's one of the oldest cities, not only in New York State, but also in America. Being a little bit away from the hub of New York City, Albany has its own little culture right here in upstate New York. If you just go up the Hudson River from New York City, you will find Albany. On your visit to Albany, New York, you'll be so amazed, so surprised, not only to find the traditional brick buildings of old cities, but also these like ornately built and designed skyscrapers with all the most detail in little architectural parts of the building. I am no architect, I don't know the terms for it, but you can see that the design of all these buildings in Albany signify not just that they're old, but that people really took their time and put a lot of care into designing the city altogether to look like a very established, esteemed place. No building is more emblematic of that idea than the state capitol building of New York. Of course, it's the capital of New York. We have to see what this capitol building looks like. And look at that! This doesn't look like any ordinary capitol building we've seen on the road. It looks like it's its own thing. It doesn't look like the seat of government resides and has meetings here. It seems like royalty shows up every once in a while. Yeah, for being the capitol building of the Empire State, this sure looks like a nice abode for a great empire, if you want to call it that. Yeah, this thing is huge. And if this marvel of a building is not already impressive enough, what's behind is even more impressive. So not only in this Empire State Plaza can you see a better view of the state capitol with all its magnitude and all, but you can also get this amazing landscape view of all these other buildings of probable importance. I see they have this nice grand pool display. Do things go in it, or is it just for display? I'd like to imagine that every once in a while, on better days than this, ducks flock to this little man-made pool and have a good day there. Mingle around with other ducks and birds. That's definitely not happening today while it's rainy. You know, this is actually really cool. When I heard about this plaza online, I thought, okay, it's just gonna be like a little park thing, but it's not all the time that cities really dedicate this big open plaza, this big field for all these man-made structures. And then there's something called the egg. Like at this point, I'm inclined to believe this is just showing off. This is just Albany showing off to the rest of the state and the rest of the country, like, hey, look what we can build with a lot of taxpayer money. Okay, wait, hold on. I might need to take refuge under this egg thing for a few minutes, because this rain is really getting on my nerves. Now look at how dry everything is around here. And there's nice cool breezes coming this way. Oh, this is the perfect spot on a rainy day. What a view. To think that just 150 miles north of New York City along the Hudson River, that this city, Albany, has seen and witnessed all these major events in American history, from the American Revolution to the rise of railroads and other manufacturing industries. Not to mention that this is one of the oldest surviving European settlements in the United States. I mean, this city goes back over 100 years before America got its independence. Originally, it was part of the Dutch-controlled New Netherland. That's right, all along the Hudson River, the Dutch had a lot of control from New York City up to Albany and many other places around the area. So although this Empire State Plaza is just extravagant and beautifully built, and if you come to Albany, it really is that place where you're just struck with wonder and awe about how did this place even get built, with, I'm sure, previous buildings up in place, and you really are inspired by technological ingenuity of mankind when they really put their mind and bodies to the test to build all this stuff. But I don't think we really got a chance to see the true downtown of Albany, and I really want to show you all that, because that is also a work of art in itself, just like this Empire State Plaza. Before we leave though, I'm gonna just say it. This may very well be my favorite state capitol building so far. And I don't know how many capital cities we've gone to in our journeys, but that's probably up there as number one. I mean, it looks like a castle. As you can probably tell, Albany is this amazing patchwork of both buildings from the Art Deco period, the early 1900s, these just block-like skyscrapers, but also these very old, fancy, ornate buildings with a lot more, I don't know, care to its design. Like, look at this corner building with the very decorated dome on the top. And then there's this whole complex over here. To me, that is Albany's architecture at its finest. Well, there's the Albany clock. Usually a lot of these urban city clocks from days gone by are on their own, standing. But weird how it's up on the top of that building. I guess that's so everybody in the whole block can see what time it is. Whoa. Wow, man, you really need to get a better camera. Get with the times. We are now here on the campus of the State University of New York here in Albany. New York State does things a bit differently than most other states. Most states will have this state university or university of this state. But throughout the whole state of New York, there are campuses under the SUNY flagship name, and they can reside in any amount of cities in New York. And y'all sort of know my idea with colleges, universities, campuses. I don't really try to cover them, but when I do, it's because there's important reasons behind them. For this, more so looks like yet another castle in this seemingly endless city of beautiful architecture. In the very early 1600s, a famed captain we all know today as Henry Hudson sailed up the river, later named after him, to try and find a route to the east. As was sort of the trend at the time, everyone was trying to find some sort of passage to the east. Eventually, people thought, why not just settle here? And that's exactly what the Dutch did. Right here, along the shores of the Hudson River, the Dutch founded Fort Orange. And by the mid-1600s, this place was essentially culturally Dutch. They spoke the Dutch language, they had their own Dutch traditions from the Netherlands and Europe. This place holds not only a lot of English and American culture, but a lot of Dutch history as well. Going northward this way, one will find the source of the Hudson River. Going down south this way, one will eventually sail into the New York City metropolitan area that everybody knows about. Also controlled at one time by the Dutch, New York City used to be called New Amsterdam, and then they changed it into New York. Back in the early years of American history, this river was of the utmost importance for trade. You could trade from the ports of New York City all the way up here to Albany in upstate New York. Then from here you could essentially use the Erie Canal to transport your products through the whole of New York to the Great Lakes. So the Hudson River, oh my goodness, was it important back in the day? It definitely was some 250 years ago. On this historic river, the Hudson, we end not only our day here in Albany, but our entire New England excursion. Isn't it funny how we started in Poughkeepsie, some miles over there on the Hudson River, and now we're ending here in Albany, also on the Hudson River. Sort of goes full circle. Even though this isn't technically New England, one could classify Greater New England as anything east of the Hudson River. It's a great demarcator of where you are geographically in the United States. And yes, New York is very well a mid-Atlantic state, not a New England state, but hey, I was coming back here from the trip and I thought I'd make another video for you all. Just like how we started in Poughkeepsie, ended here in Albany. So I hope you enjoyed our day here in Albany, New York, the capital of the Empire State. This place is full of history, full of culture. It's a great must visit if you happen to live in New York. But yeah, it's kind of sad our long journey through New England has come to an end, but don't worry, as I said with the end of the March Through the Midwest tour, where one tour ends, another begins, so there will still be continued adventures here on the Coverage Project. More places to visit, more states to cover, a whole world to explore, really. So that is the end of our New England excursion. But as you can tell, I am drenched, my clothes are wet, this gross rainfall isn't doing me any comfort here. I really wish it were a lot sunnier so it'd be a lot more easy and accessible to walk around the streets of Albany, but that's just what happens. Some days are sunny, some days are rainy. Hopefully, more days are sunny in the future. That is adventure for you though. Rain or shine, we will be here covering new locations across the country and hopefully, around the world someday. This ends our New England excursion, as I say before many times. So to end this off, covered in the gross rainfall of this area in Albany, New York, looking at this beautiful scenery of the Hudson River. More travels to come. I will see you at the next location.